Yeah, I started. I was running a serious runner, distant runner, and when I was approaching marriage in September '56, I thought, well, if I can't run properly and train properly, I'm packing it up. So I thought, well, I'll go back to my art. So I knew one man when I paid, and he was in the cycling club, Norman Howell. So I started going out painting with him in May '56. But he was a qualified commercial artist, and he was so good and he was so quick, and I was just learning the ropes. That actual speed was undermining my confidence. So I said, I'm going to have to go and find my own way and my own speed. So for quite a long time I went out on my own everywhere painting, and I eventually found my own way in painting. So that's the way it is.
Would you paint primarily then al fresco outside?
Yes. Yeah. I'm saying it took me a long time to get used to painting in the car. If I felt too restricted, so I was out. I knew all the sheltered places where I got against the prevailing wind, and so I was painting outdoors all year, winter and summer, and but I realised I was starting to suffer as a result. So I sort of, other men were painting from their vehicles or doing sketches from their vehicles. So I gradually got used to that. So this is a customised board, which is, when I go to buy a car, I bring my board with me. And if the board fits in the passenger seat between the steering housing and the door, that's the size I paint. Doesn't matter what the car's like.
That's the main priority.
So that's the way it is.
Yeah. So you've never painted from photographs? Have you done photography?
I have done, yes, but it's too much too much hard work. I may sort of do the likes of this thing here. I'll do drawings. And I'll blow the drawings up and make a few colour notes, and then work from that, because that's the way I've got the light and shade arranged. So I'll make a few colour notes and I'll paint from that, you see. The drawing's only about that size, you see, but I get them blown up at a copy shop in black and white, and that's what I do.
That's how you work.
So,
yeah. So do you ever go back and check any of it? You know, are you quite happy? You know, you're not trying to recreate it exactly, just the feeling of it.
Actually speaking, what you're trying to do, you're trying to capture the moment. Something. You know, you might pass that view this from, say, a dozen times and it does nothing for you, and you go another time and there's a certain effect on which grabs you, and you're trying to get the thing that catches your attention. As Norman Sal used to say, painting with a purpose. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I work from these kind of little these notes, things like that, drawings, and if there's any I like, I blow them up, and
so that's how you've always worked from the start.
Yeah,
is doing this.
Yeah. So I draw the composition that interests me, and I write down colour notes. The darkest dark, the lightest light, and what kind of a day it is, whether you're into the sun or whatever. And it's surprising what you can remember just by looking at the drawings. I'm saying this one was a kind of a rape field out by the Currachs, and the winter elms were just starting to go into winter, and this field was lit. It was a bright mustard yellow, and I've never painted it, but I've got all the information written down if I ever want to.
And who taught you this system? Is this self-taught? Is this all what you've developed over the years? Yeah. Who was your biggest influence when you were first starting out?
I would say Hoggett was. Hoggett was at first, you know. John Nicholson was a very good artist, but he was an amazing draftsman. But to me he saw too much. You know, If there was, I remember he had a lovely painting looking from the Devil's Elbow in towards Peel Hill and Castle and all. That was a lovely effect, but there happened to be about a dozen of those chicken coops, black outside weather things for the chickens in the foreground, and it absolutely destroyed the painting because your eye stops at that, whereas the object or the subject was in the distance, middle distance, and it was there, so we put it in. So
You've never been very concerned with the foreground, you know.
well, it
creating
depends.
the
It
depths.
depends where your interest lies.
Yeah.
If your interest is in the middle distance, you don't have anything in the foreground which obstructs that. So it's just more or less self-taught and things like that.
Did you have any painting partners? Did you go out with different people?
I went out with Bobby Moore for quite a long time. He was an oil painter, and we both had different interpretations and different methods, but we got on very well. And I had been out for a few years with Howard Shimon, but with weather and all, and my health's been all up the chute this last year or so, so we haven't managed to get together this summer at all. But Howard's a good painting partner as well, you know. We don't sort of bother one another when we get out.
Do you encourage people to comment about your paintings when they're halfway through, or would you prefer to just?
Well, I don't encourage them to. No, I don't know.
No. Yeah. Has anyone been an influence while you've been painting? Has has Nancy came and discussed any of the elements with your paintings, or?
And Nancy just was discussing the elements.
Yeah. When you're working on anything.
Well, we normally sort of talk about one another's work, and she may spot something that I haven't seen in my painting, and I may, similarly, might find something that bothers me about her painting. So we just suggest things, and if they want to take notice, they will do, you know. So we help one another that way. So. It's normally put the painting on the floor and put them out and I say, what do you think? And I think there's so and so, and oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
So we do that.
Yeah. Have you found it useful having someone you respect like Nancy to
when
work with them?
When Nancy and I first got together, we used to go out painting in the car together. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because the same as Norman Howell, Nancy is very direct and quick, and I'd be sort of pondering it and scratching with my pencil. And I'd hear the water going into the water pot. I think, oh God, she's got a draw. She's going to start painting any minute. And what she's doing was get the front of my mind. So I couldn't hack it.
I know you paint upstairs and Nancy paints downstairs in the kitchen.
Yeah.
That system works the best,
that's
does
the
it?
way, yeah.
So you're both independently working. What's your time? Are you disciplined? Do you work every day at it, or do you have periods?
No, I depend how I feel and whether I've got any hospital appointments or not. But I find that I haven't got anywhere near as much energy as I used to have. So I've got to feel like it before I can paint. I can't go up and sort of sit down for 2 hours as if it's a job of work, because I find that if my brain isn't engaged fully with what I'm doing, I'll make a mess of what I've started. So
so it's definitely it's part of the experience of painting that you're in the right place when you're painting. It can't be forced.
Yeah, because sometimes you go out and I'll start something and maybe get it 3/4 finished or maybe half finished, and I thought if the weather's changed or whatever, I'll bring it home, and I may find that I haven't got sufficient information to finish it off at home, so I've got to go back. And you've got to be careful because it's never the same twice, nature.
Yeah. And
you're not the same twice. Yeah. So.
Have you found that interesting, the island, the way that the weather changes, the weather, the light is?
Yeah, that's what makes it.
Yeah.
We have painted out Europe, Nancy and I, but I'd say the weather is more settled out there, and I've been in pain in Spain as well. But I say you've got this orangey red tiles and white walls and say cypress trees and things like that, blue skies, and it's very monotonous towards the island. You know, the island man is, he can change it 6 times in half an hour the weather. You know, that's what I like.
Have you painted the same scene twice and had completely different results because of the weather? Would you say?
Yeah, I don't often. I find that I get, if I do a good painting of what I think is a good painting of a subject, I don't go near it for about 5 or 6 years, because when I sit down in front of the subject, that other painting is in my mind, and
you're sort of trying to recreate it, or you're subconsciously trying to recreate it.
It influences you, you know, it's subconsciously, and so I like to find what I like to do. I like to find some painting that nobody else has wanted either. I've done this once before, and it's up the top of Lizard Churchyard, and there's this old farm building. The lane comes up here. There's the church, and looking up over, that's toward the point of air through the trees.
Yeah.
And I've only ever painted it once, and when I do things like that, and I paint a subject that I've never seen painted before, it gives me a real lift, because you're not influenced by anybody else, you see. It's but some people like Monet and all, they do about a dozen interpretations of the same motif in different effects and different times of the year, you know. But that's Monet.
Yeah. So do you revisit ones that you feel have not been so successful then? Is that what you're saying? If you
and just try and sort of work out. It obviously appealed to me, but it's trying to work out where I went wrong. You see.
Mm-hmm.
So.
When can you remember the first time you sold a painting? Did that influence when you?
Yes, I can tell you exactly. I was living in the main road in a flat, and I did a drawing of Middle Farm Lane, looking into the farmyard with the midden and everything, and I did a detailed drawing of it with colour notes. It was the first one, and I framed it. I painted it and framed it. And I sold it to a woman across the road for 2 guineas. Mrs. Luthwaite. Yeah. Peter Luthwaite's mother. And 2 guineas.
Yeah. Well, I know you've had considerable success. Does that influence the way you work? If some style is popular, does that influence you doing it again? Or what do you say?
I think when you're just learning, you find we get on hobby horses of different artists you really like, so you finish up sort of leaning toward their style, and then you eventually finish up with your own style. So hopefully.
We've got a very distinctive style. I think
Yeah.
from the gallery point of view, people can spot you from across the gallery, and there goes out of David Byrne, and they'll go over that.
See, if I go to an exhibition, I can look at paintings, I can tell you which video or book they've been reading, the different artists' interpretation of subject matter, you know, and you say, oh, he's been reading John so-and-so or David Curtis and this and the other, you know, but yeah.
So
yeah.
Going back to when you first began doing this, where would you work? Would you work just purely outside and finish off inside? Yeah. You've never had a particular studio space?
Never had a studio, no. Oh, I did have a studio in my first marriage. We were living in Selborne Road, and I converted a top attic room. It was a good room with a dormer, and I had a work surface, and I bought a big storage book thing for storing paper in. It was when John Nicholson was packing the shop up on Strand Street, so I had all these drawers with all the drawing papers and my sketches on all in, and I built a great big ceiling to floor cupboard with papers and drawings and all in, and it was a good place, that. But
Would you do more painting in that because of that studio space with the, than going al fresco, was it?
I could go up and shut the door, and the place was untidy. There was drawings and things and bits and snatches all over the place, so I could go up and say, oh, I fancy working on this today. And so when your space is limited like this, you've got to keep it a little bit tidy, otherwise it looks desperate.
Is it nice to be able to leave your palette out though, and leave all your brushes out, and come back to it?
Well, I've just put that wet sponge in and close it up, and that keeps the colours moist, you see.
Yeah.
Because it's airtight, that, you see.
Have you had that box a while?
I've had it since '56.
So you still stick to the same
I've got
box?
to put an elastic band on because it won't stay shut otherwise. But
you've been using it since 1956,
yeah, 1956.
I noticed it got a thumb hole for you to use it as a palette as well. Yeah.
And it's got, as you can see, that by your mixing wells, it's scooped, so it holds the washers, you see. Yeah. That's good.
So how long do you work at a time on your pieces, would you say? Would it be a couple of hours or?
Well, I tend to work in bursts, really. You know, if I think I want a bit more attention on the sky or a bit more detail somewhere, I'll just work on that and then put a mount on it, and then I ponder a lot. So put it on the floor and put a mount on it and see what it needs doing to it, or whether I want chucking or not. You know.
I see you've got several drawings, and so do you work on several paintings at once?
Not really. Well, I do, yeah. But I go out and I'll sort of find a subject and I'll sit down and I'll have an hour or so drawing it with the intentions of going back another day to paint it. And when I saw Big Glen, you see. So if I find I'm going about that area, I'll bring my drawing along and just see what the weather's like and what the atmosphere is like. So.
Would you say either Knox or Norman Sale have been influence on you, or?
Yes, Knox especially. Yeah, I love his colours, and I love his washes. Norman did affect me. I'm saying, God, he's not good for one's confidence, Norman. Yeah, and he was highly productive, you know, and I think he would produce more in a year than I would do in about 20 years, I think. But different people behave differently. Yeah.
I believe you've been up to the museum to look at the collections of Knox's. Is that like, do you have periods of research, or is that?
No, we had a friend who worked in the shop, and we were just saying about they don't change them very often, or they short of them. And she says, oh no, she says there's about 50 or so Knoxes up there just with mounts on, not framed, in the storeroom. So she brought us up one day and we were lifting them all out with tissue between them. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, but they'll never see the light of day.
Did you see any, did you have any direct influence once you saw those, or is it just a general mix of it?
You realise how, when you think that Knox painted his paintings all on the spot, from start to finish, and the big cloud doesn't stay in one place, and he was able to capture that and handle the watercolour. I think it was incredible. See, Norman was a studio painter. He worked from information slides and compositions in a controlled setup. But I say, with Knox, he was flying to paint on the spot and capture what he was able to capture, you know.
Would you say there's a definite colour palette that a Manx colour palette?
I would say so. Yeah. You see, there was a couple came to the island, Morrison and Heath, and they were both competent artists. They were well trained, and they were oils, pastels, and watercolours. And while they were very proficient, they couldn't get the Manx colours at all. You know, no.
Yeah, you have to have quite a few years here before you can get that light.
You've got to be sensitive to the landscape, the colours. You know. Mm-hmm. I remember Norman saying that's a green field, but underneath that green field, the slate, and what's underneath it, affects what you see. So. Yeah,
I've had experience of two Manx artists that moved to Australia, and then they came and took pictures and painted them in Australia, and when they came back, they were just completely different colour, light, and although very, like you say, very competent, just not Manx.
No.
It's actually a very subtle thing, but it's very recognisable when you go around the galleries.
See, I think an awful lot of artists on the island, you know, especially the up and coming ones, they don't paint out of doors much at all. They have anything, and they have like all these different artists and books and things, and every artist has his own palette and his own mixtures and all, and they paint the Manx landscape through their eyes. But I say,
instead of their own eyes, would you
Manx
say?
landscape, the colours are very, very subtle. They're very, very seldom vibrant. Very seldom vibrant, you know.
Do you feel you've captured them now? Are you happy with the colour?
I hope so.
Yeah. I feel you have, but I wonder whether you're still. Is there still something you're trying to achieve in your paintings when you're doing it? Yeah.
Yep.
What are there any limitations to the Isle of Man? I know you mentioned you went to you go and paint in Venice and things. Is there anything have you ever felt like?
I don't think so. I think what's happened recently, they're going to destroy the harbours. It's like Hollywood now, Douglas and Peel, and they're all full of little plastic look-alike yachts that never go anywhere. You know, it's unreal.
Yeah, that's quite dismaying for you, isn't it?
I think Knox would have blown a fuse if he'd have seen what they've done to the harbours. Because he'd like working boats. With their various shapes and colours and rust stains and things like that, coal boats and that. It's proper fishing boats now. But I say you can go there any time of the year, any state of the tide, weekends, holidays, calm weather and all, and there's not a single one in the bay in Douglas. They're all tied up, but they're all owned by companies, and half of them couldn't sail the damn thing if they wanted to. So.
Yeah. Do you still take artistic licence and go and get rid of those?
The last reason you put it in is because it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you've been very successful with it, you and Nancy, with your paintings from Venice. How did you find that challenge of painting in Venice?
It's difficult because you don't get much peace and quiet. You don't. No. But it is, you might find a little out of the way place down by a canal, little alleyways up, and you're sitting there and you'll suddenly notice blobs of paint here and there on the railings or on the floor, and you think, I wonder who's been here before us.
Painting that particular scene.
Yeah, there could be somebody there, that paint might have been there for a couple of 100 years. You know, it's interesting from that point of view. But
and the light and the colours and the architecture.
Yeah.
Did you find you were able to bring things that you'd learnt doing that back to the island? Do you think they've helped you with the island?
I think it's a different kettle of fish. We more or less know what we're doing on the island pretty well. But I say, if you get in different conditions and temperature, and you can't find anywhere that's quiet and restful, it's just difficult. So,
you don't like distraction. Have you ever worked as an artist in residence or had anyone around you while you've been working? Do you tend to work without interruption?
Well, you can't help it sometimes. You get, it's like bees in a honey pot, if they see somebody doing something like that they're all around you. But nobody, if we're painting anywhere close together, they won't watch Nancy, they don't look at me.
I don't think that's true, right?
Yeah.
So is everyone a critic then as well when they come?
Yeah. I have had stuff home across the water in the Pastoral Society and the RI, but in those days you had to pay for your own insurance and your transport and your own submission fees, and so.
Have you found any limitations to the island though? Is there anything that limits you being on the island?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. No.
You've always had a steady market here, haven't you, for your work?
Well, the market has just collapsed as far as I'm concerned this last year or so. But I say, there's not much you can do about it, because I didn't start off to paint to earn money. I started off to paint because I wanted to paint. And the biggest trouble is that when you become a bit successful, you think, oh, the money's nice. And when you don't sell something, you think, well, oh. But the point is, you say, well, what am I painting for anyway?
Yeah. So are you finding that now you're painting more for yourself rather than for the market?
You've more or less got to. You've got to.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to paint what you want to paint.
I know you were saying earlier that you only paint when you feel right to paint.
Right, yeah.
Have you ever? What happens if you try and force it? Are you? If you've got a commission or you've got an exhibition coming up.
Well, sometimes if you've got a date for an exhibition, it can kick it out of that kind of lethargy. But if you haven't got anything sort of in mind, definite. See, for instance, how we've lost our pussycat 7 weeks ago, and then I've been in hospital with a couple of mild strokes, and I don't think I've done any painting. I started this one about 10 weeks ago. This is the last time I was out.
Right.
So I've got to feel right to paint.
And then do you have a block of quite a few weeks when you feel well?
Oh, yeah.
Once you get that flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you see you have a period of painting, and then you're frightened to start. In case you make a mess of it, it's a strange feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get a bit of stage fright. Get a bit of stage fright.
It is a bit like that, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a sheet of white paper. And you say, oh God, I've not been out for a couple of weeks. Oh.
Is knowing when to stop just as important as when you overwork? Is anything get overworked or do you?
I very seldom finish anything on the spot. Because I reckon if you think it's about 3/4 finished, you say, well, I think that's about 3/4 finished, so I'll leave it now and check it over when I get home. And when you get it home, put a mount on it. It very often doesn't want any more doing to it. You get drawn in by the subject because it's there, and you've caught all you want to catch in your watercolour at that stage. So, yeah.
Can I be cheeky and ask, have you ever ruined any? Have you ever ruined any?
Oh, absolutely, yes, yes. We go through our paintings now and again, and we get the bin bag out, and we'll have a serious rip up.
Yeah.
Big bag full of torn up drawings and painting. Well, not drawings, but the paintings.
Right.
Have a clear out. Yeah. You've got to.
Yeah. And do you rely on or are influenced by Nancy's opinion on some of those as well? Some that you might not feel are there, but Nancy feels are there.
Yeah. And sometimes you see Nancy will throw on the floor. She says, I've had this around for years. I think I'll tear it up. And I said, hang on a minute, and I'll get a mount out, two mounts, and we'll mask it down, and there might be about a portion but that big. And it's a little cracker, but in that format, it doesn't work. But you say, well, I'll drop this down to that, and you've got about a third of the size, and that's the essence of the painting. It's
that was an old Norman sales trick that he taught me. Was when people came in with paintings that might not altogether be there, he said just find a corner that you can talk about, and then you're remaining positive and encouraging. But that area is really nice, but the whole thing doesn't work. But that's a really good way of it. Yeah. But like you say, for yourselves, you can pick an area and scale it down.
That's right.
Yeah, you can find that. Yeah.
It means to say that your brain wasn't working properly when you were painting it, whereas that was your actual subject and you hadn't realised it.
Have you had any blocks where you've not long periods of time where you've not painted? Blocks where you've long periods of time where you've not painted, or generally.
Yeah, it seems to happen every year. I'll have a kind of fallow period, but however.
Have you got any tricks to get out of that? Do you do anything to when you've had a while and you think, oh, I've got to get back to it?
No, I find if I've not been out for a long time, I find drawing is the best way. This is these fiberglass fiber point pens,
right?
And a block of graphite, and that's all these are. and cottage paper, and I'll do loads of these, drive around all day with me sandwiches and flask and just do drawings, and it gets you really going rather than sort of sitting and battling with drawing and watercolours.
Is there anything that you're still striving to achieve? Is there anything that you're working towards still?
No, I'm just trying to capture what I think, what I feel.
Yeah, you're still
It's never the same. Never the same. Each day, it's never the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got plenty more years of wandering around finding little views that you've not seen before.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed, David, for talking to me.
Yeah.